In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about equations. So to start off, let's just take a look at the notes document and see how I've set up my equations. As you can see here, I have centered equations with right-aligned numerical labels. So this is chapter 13, and we have 13.1, 13.2, 13.3 in ascending order. So that's pretty standard for lab reports or books and stuff. Another thing that I have is the ability to add these equations very quickly and easily. So if I just type in the word equation, I have it set up that it'll ask me to complete the word. I click enter, and just a moment here, and the equation is automatically created, and you can see that it has the caption already with an incremented number. From here, I can go here and add an equation and type something up, so it doesn't matter what it is. Ta-da! Now, one problem you might notice is that even though these numbers are labeled properly, now all of the other equations are off because I have two 13.2s. And really, I want these to continue to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, blah, blah. So how do I fix that? The solution to that is to update these equation labels. So I will select all, right-click, click Update Field. So my labels, as you can see by these little darker squares, have what are called fields, which can be changed and updated as you see here. So let's click Update Field. And so this is table of contents. And there we go. So it takes a little while to update since this is a very large document at this point. Now, as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically, I have equations with the proper formatting with a centered equation, a right-aligned label. I have labels that ascend in numerical order, and I have labels which can be updated automatically if you find that you need to add new equations or rearrange existing equations without having to manually change all of the numbered labels. So to show how these equations work, I'm going to go to a new document, and as with the last video, I'm going to create these equations from scratch. So let's go to my new document here, which I've called example document. And this is the document I created from the previous video when I was demonstrating how to create the table of contents and the numerically ordered chapter and section headings. So it's already created, and so we have this cookbook with pies and some sections, cakes and some other sections, and all that stuff. So the first thing you want to figure out is how do we create those equations with the centered equation and the right-aligned label. Microsoft Word doesn't really have an obvious way to do that, so I'm going to use what's called the table method. We're going to go to Tables, Create New, create a 3x1 table here, and basically we're going to put the equation in the middle box and put the label in the right box. So let's move these over a little bit. And what you want to make sure is that these boxes on the left and the right are about the same length so that the equation in the center box is actually in the center of the document. So if you move this one all the way over here, the equation is going to be over here. And what we want is to move that back to about this spot so that the equation is right in the center. Next, we need to add our label. So to make one of those numerical labels, which is automatically created and updated, what we have to do is insert a caption. So let's click Caption. And as you can see, I already have an equation label created, but for the purposes of the video, I'm going to create a new label just so that you understand the whole process. So we'll do new label, and we'll call it EQUA dots. Okay. And right now, the equation is labeled only with an index number. So if we had many chapters, it would still just increment by the index number. What we want to do is include the chapter number as well, so that we have equation 1.1 and 2.1 and 3.1 for different chapters. So let's go to numbering. And as you can see here, we have this box for include chapter number. The format is the numerical index, which we already have. And then this is the new element to include. Include chapter number. Click OK. And as you can see, so now we have 1-1. And actually, I don't like the hyphen, so we're going to go back to caption numbering and look at separator. So right now it's in hyphen, but I'm going to change that to a period. Click OK. So now we have equation 1.1. Click OK. And as you can see, the caption was created outside the box. So let's cut, and let's just paste that into our table. Alright, so another thing you may have noticed is that this equation is not centered horizontally nor vertically in the box, and we want to do both. So the first thing here is let's go to home and center that label. And now we have to center it vertically. So the problem here is that if we select it, we can see that our equation has some empty space afterwards, and we want to get rid of that. So right click, go to paragraph, indents and spacing, and you can see there's a spacing before and spacing after. Right now we have 10 points of spacing after. Let's reduce that to 0. Click OK. And now the spacing goes away, and so we have a perfectly centered equation label. To add an equation here, we can just go to document elements and click equation. And then as before, we can just put an equation there. Got it? And lastly, we want to get rid of these table borders. So let's highlight this, go to tables, and you can see we have this border options. So if we click that, right now it shows all borders. We want to show none. And there you go. So now we have an equation with the equation itself being centered and the label being right aligned. And if I copy, and let's just say I paste it down here, now I have the same equation, but the equation label has incremented. And I can do the same for this, and again, it increments. So the next thing I'm going to show is how to create these equations more quickly. So you can do what I'm doing right now and copy an existing equation and paste it somewhere else. But you might not want to have to do that every time. So I'm going to use what's called auto text in order to automatically generate these equations much more quickly. So let's first get rid of this equation. I'm going to highlight this whole table and equation label, go to Insert, Auto Text, New. And let's type a name for this, New Equation. Click OK. So here's how auto text works. As soon as I start typing in that phrase which I just created, it'll ask me if I want to fill it in with the auto text. So New Equation in this yellow box, and if I click enter, it'll create the equation for me. This is similar to what I showed in the actual notes earlier, where, let's see here, when I typed in the word equation and clicked enter, it made the whole equation with the label and the table and all that stuff. So let's go back to this. And right here, I just created the new label, so I can do new equation, and all that stuff. One thing you might be wondering is why I don't create my auto text with an equation already in it like this, because that would probably be the more logical choice. Well, the reason for that is that when I do this and try to add new auto text, the option is grayed out. I know this is not a problem for Windows because I've seen it work for Windows where you can put an equation in the table and create that whole thing as an auto text. But for some reason with a Macintosh computer, it doesn't work. So just a thing to point out. And that's basically how you create properly formatted equations which automatically update in numerical order. So the last thing I want to talk about is typing up equations themselves. And we use Microsoft Equation Editor. Let's see here. Just trying to find a good space to put an equation. So to understand how the equation editor works, we have an equation selected, and you can see we have all these different tools. So you can create fractions, you can create subscripts, superscripts, integrals, accents, all this other stuff, as well as mathematical symbols for Greek letters and plus and minus signs and equal signs and all that good stuff. So this can be a little bit frustrating the first time you're using it because you have to do all these mouse clicks to do simple stuff. So if you want to do, oh, made a mistake there, but let's create a new equation. And for example, if you want to do a superscript, like an exponent, you gotta type this, and then if you want to do a fraction, you gotta go here and you gotta click fraction. And then if you want to put a pi symbol, you have to go here, and you have to hit the drop down, try to find pi, so there it is, and you gotta click here, and you gotta go A, and that all takes a very long time. So the only thing I want to point out here, without going into too much detail, is that the equation editor has a lot of built-in features, a lot of built-in shortcuts, which can greatly reduce the amount of time to type in an equation. So just as an example, to do a superscript, you can just do E, type a caret, X, spacebar. To do a subscript, you can do underscore, spacebar. And this same convenience applies not just to these types of elements, so I'll just show one more here. You can do 2 divided by A, and if you click that, it automatically creates a fraction structure. And it not only applies to these sorts of structural elements, but these shortcuts also allow you to type in these symbols more quickly. So let's do another equation. If we were trying to type in the symbol for alpha, well, let's see here. Well, you could find it right here. You'd have to click it to insert it. But that's not the only way to do it. So let's hover over beta here, for example. And you can see to the right side, there's, in parentheses, the shortcut for typing in beta on the equations. You use a backslash followed by the word beta. So here we can do backslash beta, and there you go. And the same applies for lots of other elements. So you can do, for example, approx to make the about equal sign. You can do it for all the Greek symbols like I've already shown, and you can do it with a lot of other stuff. So you should really play around with that, and this will greatly reduce the amount of time you spend typing up these equations. Now, you do still have to use your mouse to manually enter in some stuff. For example, like integrals, there's not really a shortcut for doing integrals, nor for summations, nor for a lot of these accented stuff. For example, this caret here. You just have to manually click and enter that stuff in. But for a lot of other things, you can use keyboard shortcuts to type your equations much more quickly. And just to tie it all together, I'm going to go back to the first document, so our actual notes, and just do an example. So like this equation here, if I wanted to type that again, I can add an equation, and you can either manually click it here, or on Macintosh computers, you can click Control =, and it'll automatically create an equation for you. And to type this, first we need this Greek letter, so we can type the shortcut for that. Caret 2, and then space, and it'll create the exponents. V equals, so negative, rho. So rho, I can do again backslash and just rho, divided by backslash epsilon. Another space, and it creates the fraction. So that's pretty much all the stuff I wanted to tell you about creating equations. Not only formatting the equations properly, but also typing in the equations more easily. And I hope it helps you when it comes to editing this document.